Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 57 of Be With Me. We're going to find out today whether astonishment is enough, if wonder is enough, and we're going to continue with the calling of the disciples. When last we left the disciples, I think they were with John the Baptist, and I think they were down south in Bethany near Jerusalem. Now, John has been arrested. And this is part of the continuing call of these four guys. So they're back up to their hometown. And here we go. This is from Luke chapter 5. The title of this is Jesus Calls His First Disciples. That's what it's titled in my Bible. And that's not my title. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the Sea of Galilee. And he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let your nets down for a catch." So they presumably been up all night. It's morning. The Sea of Galilee is pretty big. It's 13 miles long and almost as wide. It's 150 feet deep in some parts. And Jesus, being in the boat now, says, I think, stays with them and says, "Let's go fishing." And Simon answered, verse 5, "Master, we toiled, so he's brother of Andrew, and we're going to find out he's partners with James and John. So those four guys, and maybe the fifth guy, which would be James and John's father, Zebedee. "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, at your word, I will let down the nets." So he purposes in his heart. So they go out, and when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. So it doesn't say they brought the fish aboard because they couldn't. They just enclosed them. And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking, and they signaled to their partners in the other boat, so that might have been James and John, to come and help them. And Zebedee maybe. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees. So I think Jesus was there. He fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." So this apparently all takes place out on the water. And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed Jesus. So this is a continuation of the call of these four guys, two sets of brothers, Andrew and Peter and James and John. So apparently they continue to run their business, but this seems to be their call to full-time Jesus ministry. And there's a responding to Jesus first in words, which Simon answers, "Master." So he calls Jesus, a respectful name. Then not a complaint, but an observation. "Hey, we toiled all night and took nothing." And then a yielding, "But at your word, I will let down the net." So he does that. And then a miracle happens. They enclose a large number of fish. They almost sink two boats. And then verse 8, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." So this is all full of Old Testament stuff. It reminds me of Isaiah, where Isaiah sees a vision of the Lord, and he says, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live with a bunch of people with unclean lips. And reminds me of David's conviction in 2 Samuel 24:10, where his heart struck him. But the one I wanted to go with officially is Ezekiel chapter 36, and it's a very famous verse where it says, I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put in you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh, where God gives us this intimacy and a new heart to see accurately. And it's all great and all rainbows and puppies. And then 5 verses later, verse 31, then you will remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, and you will loathe yourselves for your iniquities and your abominations. So when God gives you a new heart, one of the markers that you have a new heart is loathing and abomination. And this is what Simon says in verse 8, Lord, get out of here. I am a sinful man. It's not that I don't want to be with you. It's that I can't be with you. I'm too horrible. So when we see the Lord clearly, there's this compare and contrasting, and it brings out our sin. So exposure to the Lord is essentially similar to, happens at the same time, exposure of our sin. And seeing the Lord leads to our undoing. So as we increase in holiness, we get this increased awareness of our sinfulness. So our exposure to the Lord is exposure of me, and then Peter ends up hating himself and says, I hate myself. Get out of here, Lord. Depart from me. But the thing that struck me most today is that's an incredible thing, is woe is me, I am a man of unclean lips. Peter basically says, you're right. I have no right to stand before you. And so what does Jesus do? Does Jesus run away from this and say, you're right, you're a stinky human being. You guys are killers and coveters and lusters and stealers, and you irritate one another and you gossip? When Jesus sees this, he has compassion on Peter and says, you're right, but don't be afraid, and pushes into relationship rather than withdraws from relationship. So Peter sees his sin and he wants to depart. Jesus, who already had seen Peter's sin, pushes in towards relationship. What a God we serve. So astonishment, let's go beyond astonishment. Let's go to loathing. And then once we get past loathing, let's go to relationship. Thanks for listening.